Hi. The Gospel according to Luke, Day 9, Advent Calendar. Chapter 9, Fear, Food, and Followers. The disciples had been following Jesus around for quite a while now. They'd seen him heal people, get rid of evil spirits, teach people how to live, and more besides. Jesus decided it was their turn. He told them they had God's power over illness and evil spirits. I want you to go traveling and tell everyone the good news. Don't take anything with you at all. No spare clothes, no bag, no food, no money. Can you imagine? Only one pair of pants? Ew. When you arrive at a town, he went on, if people are nice to you and offer you a place to stay, then stay there. If they're not nice and don't want you to stay, just leave. Sounds fair to me. And so they did. Jesus' 12 friends went off with nothing, healing people and telling them all about Jesus. You'd think this would be a pretty awesome thing to do and that everyone would want a disciple in their village. But not if you happen to be Herod. People kept telling Herod that incredible things were happening all over the place. The things he heard set him off wondering, who is this Jesus guy? Was he John the Baptist who had come back to life? Was he an ancient prophet who would come back with another message? Herod decided that he would have to go out and find Jesus, see for himself what all the fuss was about. A while later, Jesus' friends came back, still in the same pants, ew, and excited to tell him all about their travels. They had so much to say. Jesus took them to a little village called Bethsaida, where they could be alone. As usual, though, they weren't alone for long. The locals soon figured out that Jesus was there, and they told their friends, who told their friends, who told their friends, who told their friends. Thousands and thousands of people all gathered around. And Jesus, awesome as ever, took time to speak to them all and healed so many of those who weren't well. After a while, the disciples started to get stressed out. They were worried about all these people. They were going to need somewhere to sleep and something to eat. And actually, their tummies were starting to rumble too. We're in the middle of nowhere. Jesus, what are we going to do? You sort them out, said Jesus. But we only have 5 bread rolls and 2 skinny fish. We'd have to spend a fortune just to get a mouthful for each of them. Jesus looked at the disciples' faces, smiled, and said, okay, tell everyone to sit down in groups of 50. Jesus picked up the bread rolls and the skinny fish and looked up towards heaven. He said a prayer. And then he pulled the rolls apart and broke up the fish and gave it to his friends. Go and share this, he said. What do you think happened next? A few people got some breadcrumbs and the odd fishtail. B, the first group ate all the bread and the fish. C, the disciples ate all the bread and the fish themselves. D, there was a big fight because everyone was tired and hungry. E, something else. The disciples kept on handing out food. Every time they thought they'd run out, there was more. The entire crowd ate as much as they possibly could. And even then, they ended up with 12 baskets of leftovers. And not just manky fish bones and breadcrumbs, but proper, tasty leftovers. Wow, how did that happen? A few days later, Jesus was taking some time out. He needed a bit of space so he could chat with his heavenly dad. Of course, he wasn't alone for long because his friends were just always full of questions. But today, Jesus had a question for them. Who do people say I am? People say all sorts of things. Sometimes they say you're John the Baptist back from the dead, or maybe a prophet from hundreds of years ago. Who do you think I am? Asked Jesus. You're the one who has come to save us. You've been sent by God, said Peter. Shh, don't say that to anyone, Jesus replied. Things are going to be difficult soon. They have to be. The leaders here, the Pharisees and the priests, they're going to hurt the Son of Man. They're going to kill him. But 3 days later, he'll be alive again. Did you know? Who is the Son of Man? Jesus is talking about himself here, but it's interesting that he doesn't just say so. When Jesus calls himself the Son of God, he wants people to remember that he's not just a human being. He's 100% God. And when he calls himself the Son of Man, he wants people to remember that he's not just God, he's 100% human too. It's one of the reasons why Jesus is so special. Following me isn't easy. You can't think about yourself all the time. You've got to make sacrifices every day. If you try to save yourself, you'll destroy yourself instead. If you give your life to me, then you'll be saved. What do you win if you have everything you've ever wanted, but you've wasted your whole life? If you're not proud of me, then the Son of Man won't be proud of you when he comes back to judge you. Some of you listening to me today may still be here when God shows up. Quite a speech. That all sounded pretty important, but the disciples still weren't quite sure what Jesus was talking about. Duh. A week or so later, Jesus took Peter, John, and James on a little mountain climbing trip. Jesus was praying, and PJ and Jay were watching him. Jesus seemed to pray and pray and pray. PJ and Jay fell asleep. Suddenly, Jesus changed. His face looked different, and his clothes seemed to be glowing. Then two more glowing people appeared, Moses and Elijah. It was almost too bright to see them. The three of them were talking together about Jesus dying soon and what it would all mean. PJ and Jay woke up with a start. There were three glowing people having a chat right in front of them. Peter scrambled to his feet and said, "It's great that we're here. Let me make you all a little tent so you can stay longer." A tent? That's the best he could come up with? Peter was still blabbering away when everything went very dark. "This is my son, the one I've chosen. Listen to him." The voice came from nowhere. It seemed as if the shadow itself was speaking. No more words came, and gradually, PJ and Jay found they were able to see again. Except now, they could only see Jesus. They didn't know what to say, so they just looked at Jesus, and Jesus just looked back. Where did the other two glow men go? A day later, Jesus, PJ, and Jay came back down the mountain. And guess what? A huge crowd of people were waiting for them. "Jesus, Jesus, you've got to help my only boy. An evil spirit attacks him and makes him cry and shake. Your disciples couldn't make him better." Jesus looked around at the crowd and said, "You don't have any faith, do you? How much longer do I need to keep doing this? Bring the boy to me." As the boy's father pushed through the crowd and brought him to Jesus, the boy began to cry and shake. Jesus spoke to the evil spirit and simply said, "Stop." Then he turned to the boy and said, "Be healed." The boy stopped crying and shaking. He was well again. The crowds were amazed at what they'd seen. They knew they had seen God's power at work. Jesus called the disciples to one side. "Listen carefully. What I'm telling you now is really important. The Son of Man will be given to his enemies." "What's he talking about?" the disciples muttered. "I don't get it." As the crowd slowly thinned out, the disciples started to talk among themselves. In fact, they weren't just talking, they were arguing. "No, I'm better than you. Don't be ridiculous. I've always been more awesome. I'm the greatest. No, I'm the best of the best of the best. So there." Jesus knew exactly what they were thinking, so he walked over to the disciples with a little boy at his side. "When you look after a child like this, you're looking after me. When you make me welcome, you make the one who sent me welcome. When you put other people before yourself, that's when you're the greatest." They all stopped arguing and looked at their sandals. Awkward. So John changed the subject. He saw a man the other day using your name and saying he could get rid of evil spirits. We told him to stop because you didn't give him power like you gave us. "Well, don't stop him," Jesus said. "If he's not against you, then he's for you." More awkward. Oops. After a while, Jesus decided he wanted to go to Jerusalem. So he sent a message ahead to a village on the way so that he'd have somewhere to stay. But when he and his friends arrived, the Samaritan people who lived there told him to go away. They didn't want him there. Nice. "Go away, Jesus. We don't want you here. Leave." Did you know Samaritans hated Jews and Jews hated Samaritans? They'd fallen out hundreds of years before and never made friends again. But Jesus didn't care. He loved the Samaritans as much as he loved everyone else. James and John got angry, then asked Jesus if they should pray for fire to come down from heaven and wipe the village out. "No way," said Jesus. Jesus and his friends went on a bit further. As usual, a trail of people snaked along behind. One shouted at Jesus, "I'll follow you anywhere." Jesus stopped and turned to him. "Foxes have their holes, and birds have their nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to call home." Someone else in the crowd said, "I want to come with you, Jesus. Just let me go and check on my family. Then I'm all yours." Jesus looked one by one at the faces in the crowd and said, "If you have things to sort out, let others do that. If you're forever looking back, how will you look forward to God's kingdom? I'm not a fox. I want to follow him. I have too much work to do. Where's he going next? My hair looks like a bird's nest. Do you think Jesus would like that?" Please join us again tomorrow as we continue our story.